In this video, I'm going to use the Rainix calculator to try and find the best team for Piggy to use in the second week of the Entei event. Welcome back to another Pokemon Sleep video. It's Bro Vinny here. Week 1 of the Entei event is about to end, and things are going to shake up a little bit in the second week because everyone's going to start at Ultra 4 rank. And we're going to get even more event bonuses with all Fire-type Pokemon with +3 skill level. And before the event, I talked about how you could potentially use a full Fire team, because +3 skill level is a huge boost, but it will only apply to any Fire-type Pokemon that you have. And that would include skill specialists who excel when they have a high skill level. So if with the skill level boost you can get up to level 6 main skill, there should be a very compelling reason to use Fire-type Pokemon. And we're going to look at the numbers today. Now, for those of you who don't know, Piggy is by and large free to play. And for free-to-play players, catching an Entei and using it for the event actually makes a lot of sense because Entei does have a powerful skill. In fact, it completely overshadows that of Arcanine's skill. And assuming that free-to-play players don't have a lot of resources like main skill seeds and candies to invest their Pokemon, catching an Entei that is caught at a relatively high level with basically a number of free main skill seeds for a limited time for the next week, how does it compare to just using Piggy's free-to-play account Pokemon? In this video, I will also happen to explain a few features about the calculator that I haven't explained before. For example, how cooking power-up, in short I like to say expand pot, Pokemon is measured in this calculator. But to understand week 2 of the event and its bonuses, we have to first go back to week 1. In the Rainix calculator settings, I'm going to leave everything as default for now, which is what the Fire event gives us as event bonuses. We get 1 extra ingredient for every ingredient production, only for Fire types, and 1.5 times trigger rate for all Fire types, and 1 extra skill level for all Fire types. In a moment, I'm going to change this to 3 so that all Fire type Pokemon will get a +3 skill level instead. But for now, let's go back to +1. Now, in week 1 of the event, Piggy didn't get Grappa Berry as favorite berry, but she did get desserts as a dish type. With Piggy's strongest Pokemon ignoring favorite berry being Raichu, it actually made a lot of sense for her to use Raichu. She's got Berry Finding S and she farmed some apples with Raichu, which is good for desserts. But for purposes of making this analysis more standardized, for example, I don't know what dish type Piggy is going to get next week. As a free-to-play, she doesn't have enough easy travel ticket for her to re-roll into whatever dish type she wishes. And just for your references, so you guys can understand the strengths that you can achieve as well, in comparison to Piggy's account, well, I'm going to leave dish types completely empty. I also don't know what everyone's dish level is, which changes the strength that your dish will produce. So basically, all ingredients are counted as base ingredient strength. If you want an actual more accurate analysis of how much strength you can achieve, you might want to put in the correct dish type for your week and then what dishes that you're going to cook in the settings. And also, I don't know what everyone's starting ingredients will be. So for example, if I saved a lot of ingredients from the week before, or used ingredient magnet or ingredient tickets from the week before, well, maybe you would have already been able to cover a number of dishes without having to farm any ingredients in the new week. So well and truly, any ingredients that are being farmed are going to count as extra ingredients. In the calculator, when it measures ingredient strength, it doesn't actually consider your pot size. So if you add up all the ingredients I've got here, so that's the 18 plus 18 plus 24 plus 120 plus 22, my total ingredient count is about 200. And the total tallied up ingredient strength for the week in the bottom here is 172,000. But even if you go to the calculator settings and change your pot size to the smallest possible, that doesn't actually change. So ingredients can be overvalued in this calculator. These numbers assume that you can put everything in the pot. So while these numbers don't actually work, especially if you have a lot of ingredient specialists on the team. So in this case, I only have 1 ingredient specialist. So I technically haven't reached the pot size limit, but if you have a lot of ingredient specialists, or maybe 5 Vaporeons that all have maximum skill producing ingredients, well, it's not really possible for each Vaporeon to make 120 ingredients each. So in other words, 600 ingredients every day for all of those ingredients to go into the pot. But you can still use this as an accurate analysis, because what you can do is secondarily, after your ingredient bag or your pot size has reached limit, you can swap out your ingredient Pokemon. And that's what most people should be doing, instead of running a full team of ingredient specialists and then ending up having to sell their ingredients, when you could be changing into a berry specialist that, well, berries have no limits. They can keep feeding the Snorlax. But the reason why this is important before we even start this analysis is that, well, Flareon is an expand pot specialist, and itself doesn't actually contribute any strength in the calculator. And of course, it happens to be that Flareon is also a fire type Pokemon, which will get benefits during the event week, especially so in the second week. And by being a fire type, if you use it with Entei, it also buffs Entei's skill. So before we even talk about how to improve an Entei event team, we first have to actually understand the calculator. So let's just give some stats to Flareon. I'll be using some of Piggy's Flareon stats. So she hasn't evolved an Eevee for Flareon yet, but if this analysis comes out to be really good, then she might. So her Flareon has helping bonus, skill trigger S, ingredient finder, helping speed, and it has main skill chance up and ingredient finding down nature. And I'm going to be using some realistic numbers for Piggy's account, but of course it won't apply to everybody. You guys will have to do your own analysis. And at Flareon, I'm expecting to be about level 25 by the time the second week begins. And what you can see here is that the calculator says Flareon will trigger about 5 to 6 times a day, assuming that you collect every production during the day. It doesn't account for any possible triggers during the middle of the night, which is possible for people who use Pokemon Go++. Regardless, let's say about 5 to 6 times a day. As usual, you should understand that skill triggers are a little overvalued, because most people won't be able to collect every single production during the day for the skill to trigger. And you cannot have multiple skill triggers happen at the same time, so only one can trigger at a time. But what you should know is that Flareon's total strength is very undervalued, because there is no strength value at all to its expand pot, and it makes sense. If you expand the pot infinitely, but don't fill it with ingredients, well, it's worth nothing. Of course, you wouldn't use Flareon's skill to do this, but during this event, Flareon's skill is buffed and it's also favorite berry. So how do we measure that? Unfortunately, the calculator is not going to help you here. What you'll have to think of is how many ingredients you've got in your bag and how many ingredients you can produce in a day, and when you do reach that limit, you would then look at swapping in Flareon in order to make your next meal stronger. Especially important if you can't actually cook the strongest meal, one with the highest recipe bonus. But what I will say is that Flareon's skill will enable the rest of the team if you produce a lot of ingredients. So for example, if you've got a very strong Charizard that does a lot of magnet and ingredients, 120 sausages every day. And with the event bonuses, let's say your Charizard reaches level 6 main skill, well, it will produce 2.2 ingredients of every single ingredient, which is why it says each 2.2. So 2.2 times, well, the number of different ingredients there are in the game, 16. So Piggy's Charizard ingredient magnet plus ingredients, sausages, added together will produce about 155 ingredients in a day. But if your current pot size is 81 because maybe you got a good camp ticket running, so for 3 meals a day, that's 240 ingredients for your pot, well then 155 ingredients is actually not that big a deal. So Flareon's skill is actually worth 0, unless you can find ways to fill up the pot, for example using ingredient tickets. In contrast, if your pot size is 15, well, Flareon's skill would then be worth a lot more, because it now enables Charizard's 150 ingredients to be dumped into the pot. Without Flareon's skill, you'd only be able to use 45 of those ingredients. So the value of this skill is very situational. The point of this is to show you that Flareon or any expand pot specialist is very undervalued in the calculator. And to be honest, it only makes sense that it's not given a value, because itself doesn't provide anything unless you use it with something. So the nuance here is that Charizard is extremely overvalued because it assumes that, well, you can always fit all the ingredients, whereas Flareon is extremely undervalued. If you put them together, they will enable each other to achieve a higher score. The main question now is it better than running 2 other types of Pokemon? Alright, now that we got that out of the way so that everyone's on the same page, let's now look at Piggy's Week 1 Entei team. So this team is what Piggy used throughout the first week, and she did get desserts, but I didn't put desserts into the calculator. And in her weekly analysis, she's expected to reach about 900,000. So by 900,000, she would be expected to reach Master 12, but because of her dish types, she's now at Master 16 at the end of the week. However, for the sake of comparison, we're only looking at the relative strength if we ignore dish types. So we will use this number as a benchmark, 909,000. Almost without question, her first 3 Pokemon, her strongest 3 Pokemon for this event are going to be the Berry Finding S Berry Specialist, Ninetales for Fire type, also does some healing. Charizard, who is very high level, matches the Fire Berry and also provides her with a lot of ingredients, and she is running a good camp ticket. Raichu is her best Berry Finding S Berry Specialist even when it's off type. So you can see that even though I don't have Greppa favorite berry set on here, her Raichu actually produces more berry strength than her Ninetales, and that's because Ninetales is currently low level, her Raichu being at max level. So it actually makes a lot of sense to run an off-type berry specialist if it's really strong, especially so when her apples matches the dish type for desserts. So the main question for her was always, well, out of the 2 remaining slots, which Pokemon she should use. For her first week, she rolled Flying and Fairy Berries as favorite berries. So initially, the idea was to run Wigglytuff, who can do healing. So the healing will power up the entire team to keep them strong, but also provide a significant amount of berry strength. Unfortunately though, her Wiggly is level 3 main skill, which is much worse than her Gardevoir. So I always question whether it's actually worth running Wigglytuff. We'll come back to that in a moment. For Dodrio, it does self-healing, which is actually beneficial because Wiggly isn't doing enough team healing. And it has helping bonus, which actually again powers up the entire team. If the rest of the team is strong, helping bonus is a powerful skill, even if the Dodrio itself isn't very good to start with. In fact, her Dodrio has speed of help down, so it's actually not very good to start with. The main reason for running Dodrio is that helping bonus to buff the fire type Pokemon on the team and also hurt Raichu, but also because it matches the favorite berry. So overall, it seemed like a good idea anyway. But being a berry specialist that matches favorite berry, you can see that out of all of the Pokemon, it provides the lowest strength. Once again, not forgetting that helping bonus is actually buffing this one and this one as well. So it's not really a fair comparison. Unless I take away the helping bonus benefits from all of these 4 other Pokemon and I add it all to Dodrio, then it would be a fair comparison. So what I'll do is I'll remove Dodrio and its helping bonus and see how much of the strengths everyone else drops by. Then I take the amount that it's dropped by and I add it all together. The total amount dropped summed up is actually about 4.7 thousand. So now if we come back over here with Dodrio's stats, add an extra 4.7 thousand, it's actually really close to that of Ninetales. So Dodrio is still a really good addition to this team. But noting that we actually need to take away 5% from Ninetales because this number is being buffed. So if we go back to the team without Dodrio, 21,600 compared to Dodrio with an extra 4.7 thousand, it works out that Dodrio is a little bit better than Ninetales, even though Ninetales is a berry specialist matching favorite berry as well, and it has Berry Finding S. So this is why I often use production comparison to see one Pokemon versus another rather than team analysis. Yes, team analysis is a more accurate representation of the strengths that you can achieve, but for me to actually compare any Pokemon that has helping bonus, I need to take away the difference from all of these, then I add it to Dodrio to know how it compares to the rest of the team. Okay, now onto the more interesting part of this video. We're going to sub out some of these Pokemon for Entei, because that's the question on the street right now. Do we use Entei, and how good is it going to be? And a reminder that this is still using week 1 stats. So let's sub out Dodrio and see what happens to our team strength. So our first team here is Piggy's Entei team on week 1. This is Piggy's Entei team variation 1, where I removed Dodrio and everyone else remains the same, but I've put in Entei. Her Entei, I've advised her not to invest yet in case she gets a better one, but her Entei has skill level up and some inventory at level 10 and 25. She won't get that level 50 for some time, so I haven't included that in the analysis. It will be just stuck at level 26 for this analysis. And unfortunately, the overall strength actually goes down. But not by much. I wouldn't say that's a big worry. In fact, if you need Entei's ingredients, or if you happen to get a good Entei for both level 10 and 25 skills, and maybe a good nature, then this number could go higher than Piggy's original team. Of course though, in week 1, Flying Berry is a favorite berry. So between a matching favorite berry with helping bonus berry specialist, that is Dodrio, versus an Entei that is also matching favorite berry, but it's focused on its skill requiring that the rest of the team is strong and has more fire types, well, currently Entei isn't significantly better. But now, if we go and change our event bonus to custom plus 3 skill level, representing that bonus from the second week, well, this number jumps a lot more. So if Piggy rolls favorite berry for flying type next week in the second week, well, Entei is actually going to be better because of that plus 3 skill level. Cementing in another factor I often say is that skill specialists are really weak unless the skill level is high. You need the skill level to be high for it to be good. So you either have skill level up sub skills, or you have main skill seeds invested, or during this event, you utilize that plus 3 skill level bonus. Of course though, this number also includes plus 3 skill level of these two Pokemon, Ninetales and Charizard, because they're both fire types. They also get the event bonus. So now if we go back to the other scenario where she was running Dodrio, that is favorite berry, and now we go to event bonus and we add 3 main skill for fire type Pokemon only. Well, actually, it's not that far off. 940,000 compared to 948,000. Still slightly better with Entei. So the main decision here is actually going to be, well, which one provides you with the right ingredients to cook your specific dishes that have the highest recipe bonus. Once again, I don't know if Piggy will roll the same berries for the next week. This is just for comparison's sake to see if Entei is any good. And so far, it's doing pretty well with the plus 3 main skill level. And that is despite the fact that her Entei doesn't actually have great stats early on. Its good stats come at level 50 and 75. Now what if we don't run energy for everyone? Because her Wiggly isn't that strong anyway, and the main reason she chose Wiggly instead of Gardevoir was because of favorite berry. By the way, it happens that her Gardevoir is actually a little better, but we figured that out a little too late. And it wasn't that much of a difference anyway. Regardless, we've changed out Wiggly this time for Entei. And again, I'm assuming that she'll roll the same favorite berries for next week. We don't know yet. So with the event bonus at plus 3 main skill level, using this team, the number stays actually about the same, 947,000. So swapping out Dodrio or swapping out a low main skill level Wigglytuff actually doesn't make a huge difference in Piggy's case. Once again, the decision is to look at which ingredient she actually needs to match her recipe type. And just for comparison, I also did the same by subbing out Raichu, Charizard, and Ninetales to look at how Entei being on the team in their place would affect the outcome. And you might have expected this outcome, but subbing out Raichu like this makes the strength go down significantly. And subbing out Charizard also makes the strength go down significantly, but knowing that Charizard depends on you having a big enough pot size to be good. And then I changed out Ninetales to see how Entei would fit into the team. Again, the strength is significantly lower, and partly because also that Entei's skill requires more fire type Pokemon to be on the team to be good. It's not just about the main skill level. Which brings us to the next very good question. What if we swap out both of these non-fire type Pokemon that weren't doing the best anyway for Entei plus another fire type Pokemon? So in Piggy's case, she has a Flareon that she can use, but remember right at the start of the video, Flareon is extremely undervalued because its skill strength is worth absolutely nothing. All it does is it enables Charizard or whoever your ingredient specialist or magnet Pokemon are to do their best. So don't just look at this number here and go, wow, Flareon sucks. The skill strength it does get from down here is all from Helper Boost from Entei. And a reminder that in our previous comparisons, Charizard was actually overvalued because we assumed that all of the sausages can fit into the pot. So now if we look at the total strength achieved, yes, it is lower than what we saw before, but we are comparing an undervalued Flareon to another team earlier that had an overvalued ingredient specialist. So again, it comes down to whether you can utilize that expand pot very well. But I'm not denying the fact that her Flareon I've set at a fairly low level as well. So the good news is that it doesn't seem to make a huge amount of difference which way she goes, as long as she matches favorite berries as much as possible, and also try to use a team that has the right ingredients for the dish type, which is basically what the entire game is about anyway. So none of this changes our concept about how to play the game, matching favorite berries and matching dish types. However, in Piggy's case, when I asked her how she went for this week with her current team, she did mention that she had way too many ingredients despite running a good camp ticket. It would actually be worth considering using Flareon, especially when her good camp ticket runs out. Now there's actually still a lot more comparisons we can make, a lot more we can talk about, and I can't cover everything in this video, but one last point I want to make here is that Helper Boost and Extra Helpful S skills like Entei or Arcanine, well, they cannot trigger another Pokemon's skill. To my knowledge, anybody who has ever seen that happen is related to desyncing from the server. So far, I have not personally noticed or has seen any evidence that the skills, the extra help skills, can trigger another Pokemon's skill. So it actually doesn't make a lot of sense to be running Helper Boost with a full team of skill specialists, because Helper Boost only produces more berries and ingredients. So the question is, well, if I use Entei with one Wigglytuff on the team, with one healer on the team, now we've got two skill specialists, and Entei's skill doesn't trigger skill, is it actually worth running a skill specialist, or should I just go to use another berry specialist? So the final comparison I want to make here is if I have an energy for everyone healer on the team, a good Wigglytuff, let's say I've put 3 main skill seeds into Piggy's Wigglytuff, and also have an Entei on the team, how does it compare to not having a healer because Entei's skill doesn't trigger skill anyway, but maybe I have another fire type Pokemon on the team, so that actually Entei's skill gets buffed even more. Now this is very much a depends on what you have type of situation. What I'll do, let's look at the number from having Wigglytuff on the team first. We're looking at 1.07 million strength. Now we're going to remove Wiggly and we're going to put in a Pokemon, let's say a mediocre Typhlosion. We're going to put it to the same level as Wigglytuff. We're not going to give it berry finding because then a lot of the strength will come from itself in this comparison. And look, if you have a berry finding S, that should be your number 1 team member anyway. So maybe you wouldn't be using Raichu, you'd be using Typhlosion in this case. So I'd actually be subbing out Raichu for Wigglytuff. Regardless, let's have a look at Typhlosion in Wiggly's place. Typhlosion with pretty neutral stats with nothing really buffing itself comes pretty close to being good in replacing Wigglytuff. Of course, would anyone invest in a bad Typhlosion like this? Probably not. Now let's give it a berry finding S, and now its strength is significantly higher than when Wigglytuff was around. But of course, back to what I was saying earlier is, well, if you had a level 50 berry finding S Typhlosion, well, that would be your number 1 team member. You don't swap out your best team member for a healer. You'll swap out your worst team member for a healer. So in this case, it would either be Ninetales or Raichu, assuming that you need ingredients. If you don't need ingredients, you will swap out the Charizard. So let's swap out Raichu because it's an Entei event and Raichu is not matching the favorite berry, and we're not enjoying the +3 main skill level like Ninetales is. So let's swap out Raichu and put in Wiggly. And of course, we're going to give it level 6 main skill. Otherwise, the Wiggly was very weak to begin with. She probably shouldn't use it anyway. Then we're looking at 1.25 million. So having a healer is a very good addition to the team, even if you're running Helper Boost, as long as the healer is very strong. Even if we take off the favorite berry from Wigglytuff, we still do more strength for the entire team because of a powerful skill. Energy for everyone, maintaining the energy for everyone else to do their job. Now, one thing that some people do is to predict when the skill trigger is about to happen. And you can do that by turning off your internet connection, your Wi-Fi, your 5G, 4G, whatever. You turn that all off and then you click on the Pokemon to see if Entei here has triggered. And if it has, what you can do, let's say you don't actually have favorite berry for Wigglytuff and its ingredient production and berry production is actually not very powerful, not very useful to you. You don't have berry finding S on the Wiggly, you don't have matching ingredients to the dish type on the Wiggly. Well, what you can do is once you know that Entei will trigger, you swap out the Wiggly for another Pokemon that actually produces a lot of berries. Then your overall strength will come out even better. So there you have it, guys. Just a lot of comparisons for you guys to look at, and maybe you guys can do your own comparison to show that, well, Entei is a good Pokemon. You just need to catch a good one to begin with, and you need to invest enough main skill levels for it to be good. But for the event, we get to enjoy those main skill levels without having to put the main skill seeds in. Thank you for watching, guys. If you guys are interested to see how my team is going to look for the new week, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to this video.